Welcome to today's episode of my show. And today I have a pleasure of speaking with Sophie Lee. Hello, Sophie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me here. Sophie is the founder of Electric Peach, and she's a communications consultant and somatic coach. I'd love to start, Sophie, with just asking you to tell us a little bit about your work and what you do, because thinking about those two different kind of aspects of communication, consultation, and then somatic and trauma-informed coaching, for some of us might be like, I don't really know how the two could come together. So please tell us a little bit about your work.
Communication is the most fundamental part of being human. And the way that I've always approached it in the context of business is about working with organizations to take really important ideas and understand how to take them out to the people who need to hear them to be able to create some form of systemic change. And within that process, there's always a really important part, which is to understand who it is that we're communicating to, because effective communication is only ever effective if we know who it is that we're talking to, what's their story, what's their world, and how do we make sure that we're communicating to that place. So I have facilitated focus groups for very vastly different organizations, but always around quite challenging, sensitive areas. Like I facilitated workshops and focus groups with young people from underrepresented groups. I've done work for charities around mixed race identity. So I've created opportunities for people to come together to share their experience. I've done work for the UN in understanding the impact of the climate change conversation. So this is all really big stuff. And I realized quite early on that if you're not approaching this in the way that is trauma informed and understanding what these kind of topics can bring up in people's bodies and how to notice that, then not only is that potentially unsafe, but also you're never going to get the impact that you're looking for. Because again, communication being such an inherently part of our evolution and part of being human, we can only really truly do that when we're coming from a place of expression rather than closing ourselves down because we felt under threat in some way.
I love that. How did you end up doing what you're doing? Because you mentioned quite few different things in here and or holding focus groups with very important subjects within our community. How did you end up doing all of your work?
I started my career in English language teaching because I graduated into the recession in 2008 with a degree in English and creative writing, no jobs. So I went to the Czech Republic and started teaching English. And that was when my interest in the human condition really started to be developed because I was teaching in government, in businesses, and having to navigate conversations and dynamics with a totally different language and a totally different culture. And then I moved from the Czech Republic to China to work for Disney. And I moved into journalism when I was there. And again, I've got quite an inquisitive, definitely very intense mind. And I always just want to understand things. So my role as a journalist was in social, cultural nuance, specifically to teach expats how to integrate into the Chinese culture and to teach businesses how to do business with Chinese businesses, because it is very complicated and you can completely ruin a relationship very easily if you don't understand the unspoken rules of those dynamics. So this is my early 20s, totally unusual start to my adult life. And when I came back to the UK, that was really something I felt super interested in, like why are people the way they are? And how do we get past barriers by understanding each other better? And how do we use communication to navigate that? So that's really been where my whole career has taken me. And when I started my own business, it was with the intention of exclusively working with businesses who have a purpose beyond profit. And as I grew the reputation of my business over the last 8 years, these different organizations came to us, and then we got more and more opportunity to work in these different fields. So with charities and nonprofit organizations largely.
I love that. And there's something that you really touched on in here. Sometimes when we live within our culture, it might seem like everybody thinks the same way, everybody has got the same value, everybody looks at things in a similar way and communicates in a similar way, whereas your experience clearly showed you that different cultures understand things in a different way and actually view things in a different way. And you said it so beautifully, that how not understanding those nuances can really ruin the potential for a relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
Yeah, I really believe that there's no problem that can't be resolved through effective communication. The challenge that we have in today's world, particularly because of social media, I think a lot of the time, and the polarization of individuals, we don't make room for nuance. We don't make room to disagree. We don't make room to listen, to understand. We're so used to just throwing our opinions that are usually half formed or formed from an emotional reaction than an actual grounded knowledge, which is, again, it's nothing, no one's fault. It's being conditioned in that way. We're not taught effective communication, and we don't always realize how we're ruining things, like how we're not having the outcome that we're looking for. And that if we understood each point of the communication process, then we would be able to change the game in so many different ways.
Yeah, what you are talking about, we certainly are seeing it on social media. The recent thing that I've been watching with utter horror, to be honest, the thing that happened at the Coldplay concert, and how the whole of the social media responded, and the naming and shaming and false statements and people jumping on a bandwagon. That is, for me, that is a scary thing with today's social media. I don't know whether you have opinion on that, but it's been very scary to watch.
My perspective is one of frustration, because there are a lot of very scary things in the world right now that nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to look at, that actually we need attention on. We need nuanced conversations around. We need radio producers talking about, and they're not talking about it. But when something like this happens, like, quite frankly, I don't give a shit if a billionaire wants to have an affair. Like, I don't care. Oh, what a surprise. A billionaire is thinking they can do whatever they want. It's completely and utterly irrelevant to my life and everyone else's life. What I think we do is we love sensation. We love to feel better about ourselves by judging other people. And that was an easy thing to do, rather than the harder things, which are the real things that need to be focused on. And therefore, it makes us feel like we're united against this wrong, and it's evil because he's a billionaire, and all of these different factors that play into our subconscious, I guess, like a story that we're all kind of part of, but it's the wrong story. And I think that's what frustrates me. When it comes to social media in general, what scares me is, similarly to you, the fact that we use that as a way to shame. And there's a really good book, if anyone listening is interested, by John Ronson, who's one of my favorite people of all time. And it's called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. And he's an investigative journalist that went and spoke to a lot of different people who thought they were just putting something out into the world as a joke. And then it just snowballed and ruined their entire life. And everyone just loves to jump onto that bandwagon. And that, I think, is scary, but it's no different to when we used to stone people in the streets, and all come along and watch and love that.
Yes, yes. I think there is something about Exactly what you just said, that those subjects that we need to talk about, those topics that we need to talk about what's going on in the world, in the public arena, we are not talking about it, but we are very quick talking about something that is a big drama, that we are pointing fingers at somebody. And really that the shaming and naming, which causes so much hurt in people's lives, remains really unacknowledged, because it's easier to point fingers at other people than actually sit with what's uncomfortable and what's underneath that, the chaos, the instability, the manipulation that is happening behind the closed door and in a very public arena as well. So for me, it crosses over with the topics and the themes that we covered in the training certification that you were just part of and you just completed. So congratulations, Sophie, on completing.
Thank you.
The training, the Trauma-Informed Somatic Teacher and Coach for Women certification. And I wonder about how the material that we covered in there, the kind of trauma awareness and trauma-informed approaches, and the role of women within today's society and historically, that feminine embodiment and feminine leadership, how has that impacted the work that you are doing?
It's impacted the work that I do in several different ways. On the one hand, what I do more of now, which is my ultimate dream, to move away from just working with organizations to working more with groups of women, and to understand where the fear of being visible, having a voice, putting it out there into the world comes from. Because personally, I've always felt like I was on the outside, and I've always known that I wasn't like everybody else. And there's a part of me that really wanted to belong and sabotaged myself as a result. And then there was the other part of me that was, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
That was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it, because no matter what I do anyway, like, I'm not going to really fit in here. And so for me, being really brazen is part of my personality. It's probably part of an archetype I have probably put onto myself, right? But a lot of women don't have that. And so understanding where that comes from, and that it's not enough to just say, just show up, just be authentic, just like, what does that even mean for somebody who's not only in their own personal timeline, but in the timeline of thousands and thousands of years, being told that that is unsafe? Because it is unsafe for our ancestors and for women around the world still today. So understanding that, and how that programming and that coding lives within the body, not just from our lifetime, but from our ancestors, and how that gets passed down. Plus, the overarching narrative that we find in everything you look at, from literature to media, is really important. And then on the other side of that, my book, which is, I've been researching a lot of, I've gone down so many rabbit holes into ancient Greek literature, ancient Roman literature, Lilith, and the first wife of Adam, and how she's brought up through different times to keep women small, the witch hunts, all of this stuff that I knew, but I didn't know to the depth that I now understand. Is like, oh my God, no wonder we're all like, no, it's unsafe, because our ancestors were killed for having an opinion.
Yeah, unnamed and shamed, as we were discussing earlier.
Or named and shamed, all of these many ways. And now, even now, you see it, like these women who are just incredible, just being themselves, older. Pamela Anderson, how dare you just look like you? How dare you? This is an outrageous that you've just gone out without makeup on and looking your age. How could you? That's news. That's what we see in every single place we look. The day after she's gone, she's dared to go to whatever event with her actual face. We hear it about Lena Dunham, who's just released a new TV program, and she's incredible and so creative and so much more herself than the majority of women that exist in the entire world or ever. And you bet that she is just slagged off in so many places, because how dare you not be thin, and how dare you push the boundaries, and and it's just the same thing. We hear it over and over and over again.
Yeah. What you are talking about is this reality that we live in. And this is so painful for so many of us, wanting to share our gifts, wanting to show up in an authentic way, just as we are as women, and then really seeing the cost of showing up as your authentic self.
Yeah.
So many women really stop themselves from sharing their passion and sharing their gifts and having a really profound healing impact within their communities and the world because of that. I want to hear a little bit more about your book, please, because I am really cheering you on, Sophie. It's amazing, amazing to hear about your process and that you're writing this book and you're bringing so many different strands into it. So can you tell us a little bit more about this, please?
It's called Beyond Palatable, a manifesto for unapologetic women. And it is loosely based on my own experience of shrinking myself and dulling myself, and how that took me through a lot of serious self-abuse, to be honest, serious challenges with drugs and toxic relationships and constant self-abandonment, to realizing one day that I was surrounded by cocaine and alcohol, and realizing that this was all happening because I didn't believe I was fundamentally lovable, and I didn't believe that I was worthy. And that coincided with when I started my business, and I destroyed every opportunity that came my way and had a business partner. So it was suddenly not just about me, it was about the dynamic. And she was incredible as a support. But as a result of that, I then had to go on this real dark night of the soul journey of self-understanding and unpicking. And the book is that process, but most of it isn't really my story. It's the story collectively of women who throughout history have had to dull themselves down, fit inside boxes, make themselves palatable, and how that is a form of self-abandonment, and what self-abandonment creates in the body, which is a deep sense of distrust for oneself, which is a nervous system dysregulation, and then how that disconnects us from our potential for joy, connection, love, expansiveness. And at the end of it, all of it, what lies underneath all of that is control of patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism, and how it compresses us and keeps us totally mute and disconnected, because women are the most powerful collective on the world. And not just because we are the ones that are connected to the earth in a way that men aren't, because of our cycles, because we are magic, literally. We can 3D print a human being within our body, like it's mad. But not just because of that, but because we actually uphold capitalism. We are the unpaid labor that upholds capitalism. We are the paid less labor that upholds capitalism. And we are also the ones that buy all of the shit that upholds capitalism. So if we woke up tomorrow and we were like, do you know what? Actually, I don't need any of this. This is all complete shit. Just going to crack on and be my best, most amazing self. Everything would crumble overnight. So they can't have that. They cannot have that. Yes. And that's why when you start seeing it's a perfect creation of a vacuum that sucks out our magic.
Yeah, whole business industries are built on us feeling like shit and not good enough, and yet another thing, another bit of cosmetic, another book, self-improvement book, another piece of clothing, another not yet, not yet, not yet.
Yeah. And the bit I didn't tell you about my personal story and career is I started after I was a journalist. I accidentally found myself in marketing, which I was just like, hate this industry. And I worked for clients like L'Oreal, like big corporations. I'm not going to say too much about it because I probably get sued. But big corporations use entire models is around making women feel like they need something else to be complete. And that's why I started my business in the first place, because I thought these tools of communication are so powerful. They literally create global narratives. Like the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is complete rubbish, created by Kellogg's. I fast every single day. The days I fast is the actual, I'm much, much higher performance than the days I don't. So it's just complete rubbish. The idea that diamonds, one of the most common gemstones, are rare and need to be bought for women, and preferably if they're 3 times your male salary, like monthly salary. Like all of this is created by marketing and advertising industries. So it's powerful stuff. And if we use that tool instead to do the opposite, then that also will be a powerful driver of change.
Yeah, just having this conversation, I can feel how there is a welling of sadness within me that as humans, we have got such tendency to use these amazing tools and approaches and understanding for greed and grabbing and snatching and unsustainable growth that is completely not for the benefit of all, but for the benefit of very few, which is very masculine kind of approach, isn't it? Instead of this more feminine, rooted, grounded, embodied way of being, where the decisions that we make and the things that we create are for benefit of all, where we bring people together, when we collaborate, where we share the wisdom, where we create a better world for everybody. It's such a different energy to both of those things.
For sure. And it impacts everybody. And also it makes sense. And actually, it never really benefited the masses. It was always just a very small percentage of people, men, that benefited from that, as it is today. And each time you can see how these pivotal moments happen, and it's really fascinating to go through and really look at it. Like patriarchy started because we went from being foragers to farmers, and suddenly there was land to own, and so our mentality went from the collective to the individual. But then it was like, how do we keep this land? And then it passed between the men, and that was the start of it. It wasn't really, it was like it was for a purpose rather than it being any kind of evolutionary thing. And what's interesting is when you look at studies on our ancestors in the monkey world, they are matriarchal. They're not patriarchal, because actually, like, that kind of like way of being, looking after one another's babies, helping each other, that's actually better for our survival. And human beings, like, blow my mind, we're the only species that has engineered its own extinction. And that is very interesting in terms of where that's come from. And it's because of communication, because we, at certain points, like capitalism literally was started by 4 men in America and a fight for oil, steel, and automotive and electricity. So it was like the 4 men that created all of this. And it's wild that those 4 men have created the whole system in which we live in today. But again, it doesn't benefit anybody. We're just told, oh, you need this because this is what will make you happy. And then we're like, why am I so miserable? I've got everything I want, but I'm still so miserable.
Yeah. That's a very good question. And the answer to that, it's always, and I'm sure you agree with me, it's all about connection. It's all about, witnessing each other. It's all about holding space for each other. It's all about collaboration, which is a very feminine quality.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is in all of us. It's not men versus women. I think men also are aware that something is completely wonky in the way that we're living our lives. And the problem is that we're deliberately disconnected from that solution because, again, like we said before, it's so simple. It's so innate. It doesn't require spending any money. It requires creating space and creating time.
Yeah.
My God, what that? You can't, no, we can't have that. If I can't sell you this, then it can't be valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything is a little bit wonky and out of context. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading your book once it comes out and seeing how you put it all together and the story and the kind of learning. That it's my kind of book, let's say that.
That's
I'm
it's
really
gonna be intense. But I have tried to make it accessible at the same time.
wonderful. So apart from book, what's next for you, Sophie? I know that you are writing your book now and your plan is to complete it quite soon. What's beyond the book? What's the kind of the vision or the dream beyond that?
My biggest dream would be to travel around and first share the stories that I have collected, my own, and also our collective narrative in different contexts, in schools, in businesses, and help people to understand their own innate power. I think that's the really key part of it. And to understand the impact of self-abandonment so that they see that this is so much bigger than just don't be an yes person, don't be a people pleaser. How much this is so innately ingrained within our nervous systems and what's possible for us on the other side of that and why that matters. And also, I'm working more and more with women around activating their voice, really telling their own stories from a sense of conviction and connection, and that idea of going back around the campfires, the going back around, it wouldn't have been called a campfire, but like our in our tribes, coming together every single night to tell stories that were essential for our survival. They still are, and just in different ways, and how to help women really regulate themselves in the process of doing that. Those are the sort of things that I'm most passionate about doing. And even though I really love working for bigger businesses, I don't get that same sense of satisfaction because it's always one step removed. Whereas individuals, when they are resourced in this way, can make such a huge impact.
Yeah, great. That sounds absolutely wonderful. So, Sophie, if anybody wanted to connect with you and find you out there, how can they do that?
They can find me on my website is electricpeach.co.uk, and soon there will be a Beyond Palatable website as well, which is for the book. And they can find me on LinkedIn, which is where I mainly operate, which is maybe a little bit sad, under Sophie Jane Lee, and on Instagram, Electric Peach Studios.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophie,
Thank
for taking
you.
time chatting with me.